What is the truth behind the message that the critical drinker always talks about? Well, let's find out. Now, the critical drinker needs no introduction. I've also done so many of them by now that I really can't be bothered. You know who he is, I know who he is, and whether you like him or not, welcome. I promised in my last video on the critical drinker, where we went over the dishonest nature of his content, that today we'd instead look at the more underlying parts of the critical drinker's content. Because everyone sees the drunken Scottish film critic persona, but how many people really look into the things he says? Now, I've mentioned before that the critical drinker is part of the general anti-woke movement on YouTube, and while I definitely think he aligns himself with that group in a lot of ways, which we'll get into a bit later, his content is still a lot better in that sometimes there is an honest take. I mean, there's a reason he's so popular. His videos do actually have more thought put into them than, say, Geeks and Gamers does, and he does have some interesting things to say about movies. If he didn't focus so heavily on the message, I would probably actually like a lot more of his videos and find them interesting. Naturally, he's not the most talented movie reviewer. I know he's written books and he tries to make his language seem sophisticated, but his actual knowledge and understanding of film as an art form isn't really all that complex. But hey, neither is mine. I don't think you need to be the most knowledgeable person to make a video essay about movies or media. You just need to care enough to put in the effort. So yeah, I think he honestly makes better videos than a lot of other people I compare him to, and it's in part due to his sometimes interesting ideas, but most importantly, he says what people want to hear, and he has a silly voice, and I think those are his biggest appeals. Because where the drinker's content fails to be meaningful in my opinion, and rather has the opposite effect, is that he just can't let go of the grift. He knows his audience, he knows what they want to hear him make fun of movies, they want to see him talk about how woke modern day politics are ruining the film industry, and basically they want him to regurgitate the same arguments that the rest of the anti-woke crowd do, just with a more pseudo-intellectual veil. And the problem is that he'll go to any lengths to do this, even be dishonest in his videos, which we looked at in my previous video on him. So strap in, like this video, and let's dive deep into Will Jordan. Now, I want to start by mentioning the video I made on the critical drinker almost 2 years ago, because it has since grown to be my most viewed and easily my most controversial video. I want to talk about it because there are some points I want to double down on, but also some viewpoints that I want to take back or at least expand upon, because this video was made a while ago and since then my knowledge of film and politics have changed and evolved. So that video is in some parts outdated. Now, I still stand by most of what I said in that video. For example, I call him and his audience out for harassing Brie Larson, who really has done nothing to these people other than existing and being sassy in a couple of interviews. The anti-woke crowd in general has for years used Brie Larson as a scapegoat to blame for everything that's wrong with modern Hollywood and progressive politics, and it's just not warranted in any way. And for someone who tries really hard to keep this intellectual and pristine film critic persona, his videos on Brie Larson show that he doesn't really care about film reviews or the media he claims to love. He just cares about the grift and how he can use people like Brie Larson to pander to his audience of mostly white men without thinking about the impact his videos can have. Whenever Brie Larson breathes or says anything in an interview, these channels are always right there to take advantage of it. It's only about the views for these people. There are also his takes on strong female characters.
And on the surface, Thor Ragnarok seemed like great fun, at least until you started to look a bit deeper and realised that he basically spends the whole movie playing second fiddle to strong female character and strong female antagonist and getting his ass kicked by both.
When he only ever has these standards for female characters but never the male characters. I go into way more detail about this in my video on Drinker's Hollywood Hates Men video, but basically a lot of it boils down to him wanting movies to return to the time where men and women were portrayed with more traditional gender roles, where men are stoic, strong, and in touch with their emotions, while women are more emotional, compassionate, and can use their sensuality to get what they want, rather than nowadays where the portrayals of both men and women are a lot more nuanced and diverse, which is more in line with reality. But this ultimately leads him to being very outspoken about strong female characters in cinema. His video on Gina Carano back when she was fired from Star Wars was also just incredibly vague and uncritical.
Gather round, dear viewer, as I tell you a tale. It's the tale of a woman who stood tall in the face of jealousy, cowardice, hatred, and vengeance, and dared to utter a single word. No. It's the story of the girl who wouldn't back down.
It painted her out to be some heroic saint who bravely stood against the armies of the woke mob and never crumbled under their pressure of asking her to not be a transphobe or a conspiracist or completely ignorant towards the Holocaust. And listen, my problem with this video wasn't that we disagreed on Gina Carano being fired. I mean, we do disagree, but the point is that his video is so incredibly void of any real argumentation. He doesn't represent the situation accurately, he doesn't engage with the arguments for or against Gina Carano. He just gives a delicately written rant about how amazing and brave she is, pandering to the emotions of his viewers, rather than using evidence to make a concrete argument. So these are things that I absolutely still stand by, however there are still a couple of problems with my video. First of all, I call him out on calling Captain Marvel a Mary Sue because I see that phrase being misused all the damn time. However, I think my argument ended up being a what about this character, rather than actually engaging with the claim that he made. And so me calling Hulk and Thor Mary Sues too, according to his logic, was not the best argument because I should have rather directly debunked the claim that Captain Marvel is a Mary Sue, because she really isn't. A Mary Sue refers to either a self-insert for wish fulfillment in fanfiction, or in most cases a female character who's talented at everything, essentially a flawless character. But if you actually pay attention while watching the movie, even if you don't like the movie or the character, you have to admit that this just isn't the case for Captain Marvel. She doesn't have too many obstacles, but she absolutely does have struggles. She kind of gets her ass handed to her multiple times. Mary Sue is also just quite a derogatory term used to signify female characters that are good at something, when the same standards really aren't present for male characters. There's also a part where I'm talking about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I have a little rant on systemic injustice, and I think my intentions were good, and I was calling out an actual bad argument, but you can just tell that I didn't fully comprehend the topics I was talking about, and so this section comes off as a bit cringe and naive. I also say that if you don't agree with progressive social messages, then you should just stay quiet about it, which was very childish of me, because that's stupid. People should feel free to voice their opinions, and other people should feel free to call them out on it if they think those opinions are wrong or harmful. So yeah, while there are some things I said in this video that I think were misguided, I still made arguments that I think are relevant and important. Now, the Critical Drinker isn't just all negative, he does have some mostly decent reviews of media. His Drinker Recommends series is usually perfectly fine and interesting to watch most of the time. However, even when a video is mostly good with an interesting analysis, he has this weird habit of interjecting some forced idea into his content that has something to do with wokeness or the culture war, and it kinda takes you out of the otherwise good video. Let me show you some examples from his videos on The Batman, Across the Spider-Verse, and Prey, because these videos by themselves are pretty good, but they have these unnecessary lines that serve only to fuel division between his audience and the so-called woke Hollywood. And when I say good reviews, I don't just mean positive, I'm talking about a genuinely well-established review that's being critical of the media in a sound and interesting way. A good review doesn't just have to be positive, you don't need to agree with everything being said, but it just needs to be valid criticism. And these videos mostly are, and whenever these videos eventually turn into anti-woke nonsense, it's just disappointing, because it was otherwise a solid video. But let's just take a look at where these reviews fall flat.
Seems to be a bit of a debate going on about whether or not this movie is woke, mainly because of the demographics of certain characters. And to be fair, there is a bit of evidence to support this claim. If I was a cynical man, I'd say it's kind of interesting that the rich, corrupt scumbags targeted by the Riddler all happen to be straight, white, middle-aged men, but hey, I guess that's just a total coincidence. Also, I can't shake the feeling that the script is doing everything in its power to play down Peter Parker, like it's afraid the audience will somehow start rooting for him over Miles if he's shown to be too capable and confident. The first movie portrayed him as an aging, burned out loser who only redeems himself at the end, while the second film morphs him into a bumbling, hapless father in a pink bathrobe who for some reason keeps taking his baby along on life-threatening adventures despite having a perfectly capable mother at home to look after it. Is this some weird attempt to mock and belittle the Spider-Man that most people know and love, who incidentally just happens to be the only straight white man in the entire movie? I don't know, man, it just kinda leaves a sour taste in my mouth, that's all. So anyway, female character does the smart thing and runs the fuck away, only to bump straight into a hunting party that was sent to look for her, so that the rest of the plot can happen. Wow, it's lucky that in all of these hundreds of square miles of territory, she just happened to run into the very people that she needed to find. So she tries to warn them about the Predator, but they're having absolutely none of it because they don't want to listen to a girl. But it's okay anyway because the Predator shows up to take on this horrifying display of toxic masculinity and helpfully wipes out everyone except female character. But oh no, then she gets captured by a group of evil white men who are also hunting the Predator.
There's just no reason for him to say these things other than riling up his audience, because they actively hurt his analysis. Yes, statistically, most rich people in America are white men. It makes complete sense as a part of a greater theme being explored. Also, the main character is a white man. It's not like this movie is saying that white men are bad. It's a lot more nuanced than that, which I know he understands because the rest of the review points out this nuance. But mentioning the rich white men is just a little treat for his audience, and he knows that. The Spider-Verse video is also pretty good overall, but this section about Peter B. Parker seems whiny and unnecessary. Peter is not the focus of the story, and if you are looking for the white straight man to be in focus, then watch literally any other Spider-Man movie or TV show. Peter Parker isn't being overshadowed, this movie just isn't about him. Also, I really fail to understand how Peter being happy, having overcome his depression, having married the love of his life, and having a child who he loves spending time with, is somehow disgraceful towards him. This part is literally just meant to serve the people in his audience who get annoyed when white men aren't being given the spotlight all the time, and that's sadly a lot of people. Now, his Prey video is a bit more explicit, with him being mad at feminism and pointing out that the movie hates men. He talks this way all the way throughout. However, there is a decent review hidden underneath the message. And listen, if he didn't think the main character was interesting enough, or that there are some plot conveniences, then he absolutely has the tools in his arsenal to formulate that without the need to say the strong female character somehow does what the men can't, and then the evil white men capture the strong woman, but then the strong female character kills the Predator when the trained soldiers of the original couldn't. If you were looking for an honest review of Prey, then you're not going to find it here. It's just disappointing because you know the good critical analysis is there. He just chose to preach about the message rather than saying something meaningful. Kind of ironic since that's what he calls modern Hollywood out for doing all the fucking time. So yeah, these statements are just unnecessary. His videos don't need these comments, but the reason he feels the need to mention how the Batman calls out rich white people, or that the only white straight man in Across the Spider-Verse isn't the focus of this story, is because these are the takes his audience actually cares about. I'm sure he has fans who only care about his genuine ideas on movies, but he does share a pretty significant portion of his fan base with other anti-fan channels like Geeks and Gamers, Nerdrotic, Chris Gore, Eric July, and most of the others. He streams with them quite regularly, and the fans of these channels, drinkers included, mostly care about it when they talk about wokeness, diversity and identity politics, or the failure of woke modern Hollywood, or feminist agendas meant to bring down men, while propping up the women. That's what anti-fan channels are about, and so Drinker knows that he needs to mention this stuff at least a bit, even when the video would be perfectly fine without it, even better at that. So if you think it's uncharitable of me to compare Drinker to other anti-fans and known bigots like Geeks and Gamers, Eric July, and The Quartering, then you aren't paying attention. His true message can be quite difficult to point out on his main channel, where he usually does a good job of seeming professional and neutral, at least until you watch further into his videos, but look no further than his second channel, where he makes frequent videos and live streams with his friends. And I know that some people who like The Critical Drinker don't like these other channels, seeing them for the far-right grifters hiding as nerd channels that they are. But they still like Drinker because he actually makes decent content. However, I don't think a lot of these people realize that he has a second channel where he almost exclusively makes content with these other channels, and overall is a lot more open with his message and ideology than he is on his main channel, which he plays very safe. And when you realize that the only people Drinker associates with on YouTube are channels that spread these anti-woke sentiments, then you begin to understand exactly what motivates his videos as well. And spoiler alert, it's not love of the medium. Because while I do believe that he cares about film and art, it's clear to see that his audience isn't there for his opinions on movies, they're mainly there for his negative takes on modern Hollywood. If we take a quick gander at his second channel, Drinker After Hours, you'll see that he's a lot more open with his anti-woke angle than he is on his main channel. And just by taking a quick peek around, we'll see videos like woke ads are destroying entire companies, the Marvels is everything wrong with the MCU, the emasculated male lead, the epic feminization of Star Wars, which by the way we debunked in this video and showed just how ridiculous and dishonest their arguments are, but we also have fragile snowflakes have ruined film sets, pampered fragile actors are ruining cinema, the war against attractive women, And this is your Aragorn now. And these videos are mostly the same. It's the drinker joined with a batch of anti-woke channels, which could be either Geeks and Gamers, or Eric July, or Nerdrotic, or Disparu, or Chris Gore, but they essentially talk about woke things that they don't like, whether it be that Magic the Gathering made a black Aragorn, which by the way has no fucking impact on these people, but could actually mean something positive to a lot of people. But at the end of the day, this card does not take anything away from Aragorn in the Peter Jackson movies or the Tolkien books. Nothing. They're still there, and they're still great. This is just a new iteration of the character in Magic the Gathering. It has no impact on you unless you let it affect you, but it could actually mean something positive to other people. It could also just be a group of man babies watching an ad that depicts a woman who doesn't look like a conventionally attractive, skinny supermodel, and God forbid that they can't jack off to video game characters anymore. We also know this guy loves talking about the emasculated white man, and so does his friends, despite that movie being pretty good and them admitting that. However, this title is the one that really spoke to me, because how can a movie that hasn't come out yet be everything that's wrong with the MCU? That seems like a bit of an over-exaggeration. I'm guessing it has to do with the fact that it centers around 3 women, 2 of which are women of color, and the other one being Brie Larson. I swear, they're going to act like they're mad about this movie, but it's literally what they've been waiting for. A Marvel movie starring Brie Larson that also focuses on 2 women of color? The sheer number of videos we'll see about this movie will be insane. And they're going to have a field day, because that's the thing, channels like these feed off of outrage. For all they talk about wanting wokeness out of media and for movies to be good again, they don't actually want this to happen. They don't want anything to change, because if they got what they wanted and Hollywood stopped being woke, and the white man was the main focus of Hollywood once again, then what the fuck would they complain about? We all know that they profit from calling out wokeness in media. That's why they're relevant in any way. Channels like Geeks and Gamers, Nerdrotic, and The Critical Drinker are not popular due to their video making skills or their love of art. They're popular because they dunk on wokeness and because they say exactly what their fans want to hear, even if they have to be dishonest about it. Again, check out my video on Drinker's dishonesty if you haven't already. However, it's a bit difficult to get clips from his second channel videos because they don't really say anything of importance. It's just rambling with an enticing title, even though the video doesn't add anything to the title, but here's a clip to give you an idea of the nature of this content.
I think the past 4 years has been like the most subtle walk back in cinema history, where it's like they launched her movie with all these bold plans that she was going to be the face of Marvel going forwards. Like, basically, forget Iron Man now, it's going to be Captain Marvel. She's going to be leading the Avengers. And then, like, the insane backlash to that character hit, and suddenly it's like, let's just keep her in the background for now. And it's now like 4 years later, and we've seen her, like, I don't know, a grand total of like 2 minutes of screen time in that whole period. She has done absolutely nothing. They know that she is a gigantic steaming turd. This movie isn't just a Captain Marvel movie. Now it's predicated on the 3 of them, like, supporting it, essentially, because they kind of know that Captain Marvel's not all that popular.
It's just really surface level analysis, because even if you don't like Captain Marvel, or your audience didn't either, you'd have to be daft to not acknowledge that Captain Marvel was a success for Marvel. It's one of their highest grossing movies, it got decent reviews, and Captain Marvel is a very popular character within certain parts of the fandom, maybe just not the critical drinker side of the fanbase. Oh, so yeah, nobody wants to see Captain Marvel, that's why she's getting a sequel to her movie, a movie that, yes, has taken a while to come out, but these channels also always complain about rushed CGI and scripts. But then when one of these movies actually gets delayed to try and account for this, then they'll complain all the same, saying, look, they don't believe in this movie. I mean, believe it or not, you guys probably play a part in Captain Marvel's success. You mention her and Brie Larson so often that the name keeps circulating around. You guys are good for Marvel's business, especially when the videos you do make are these low-effort rants where you spend most of the video talking about Brie Larson and how she's irrelevant, despite you talking about her, and you make contradictions like when you say that Captain Marvel isn't popular enough to carry her own movie, and so she needs to share the spotlight, but then you also talk about how Miss Marvel and Monica Rambeau are irrelevant too.
So, but what you would really need to do then is pack it with, like, well-known popular characters to help support it. Instead, what you've got is Ms. Marvel, who's only known for a TV show that nobody fucking watched. It might have been great, it might have been amazing, doesn't matter, nobody cared, like, no one saw it. And you've got Monica Rambeau, who's known only from WandaVision. Again, a TV show that not that many mainstream fans of Marvel have
Well,
watched.
the main
So why would Marvel even make this movie if no one cares about the characters? Well, you'd probably say that it's because they're incompetent, but I think the more sane answer is that these characters are popular, even if you don't want them to be. And so maybe if you didn't want these movies to be made, then perhaps don't talk about them so much and make them popular. Just an idea. However, based on what we've seen so far, from his weird reviews to his focus on the message, I truly believe that the Critical Drinker is a bad influence on the general discourse surrounding media. Now, while I've mentioned this multiple times already, his videos aren't bad, and naturally he isn't just solely a monster. It's just that he still interjects his videos with anti-wokeness, and the truth behind his message becomes so much clearer when you look at his second channel. For once, he's actually less dishonest with what he really wants to say over there, which is honestly kinda scary because his main channel is where he has most of his influence. That's where his reach comes from. His second channel is mainly for his more devoted subscribers, but his main channel reaches a much broader audience, and he knows this, which is why he keeps his videos somewhat respectable. But when you pay closer attention to his videos, you begin to notice some pretty alarming shit. For example, I really need to mention this clip from his video on She-Hulk.
Only for her to run into a group of evil men outside. I mean, I assume they're evil because that's clearly what the writer wants us to think. The problem is that they don't really do anything all that bad. I mean, they show some mild interest in Jen, who's clearly not interested, and when they persist, she hulks up and almost kills all of them. And it's only the intervention of Bruce at the last second that saves their lives. And that's it. The big payoff here is Jen scaring the crap out of a bunch of dude bros who normally would have been scary and intimidating to her, and whose only real crime was being a bit too forwards.
Ah yes, these drunk men are just casually showing some interest in Jen in the middle of the night, and when she clearly isn't interested, they do the friendly thing and follow her. And circle her. They're just persisting in a friendly manner. Their only crime is being a bit too forward. They definitely didn't have other intentions. No, but seriously, this is the drinker either consciously or unconsciously being a predator apologist. It's really fucking alarming when you consider that he has a large audience of young men, which we know because he caters towards young men. And they'll see a video like this shitting on She-Hulk, talking about how it hates men, and they'll watch this part and think that behavior like this is okay. That following a woman at night with your drunk friends after she has stated that she's not interested, and then circling her, that this is okay, and if the woman doesn't like it, then she's just lashing out or being aggressive like Jennifer is. Listen, you can criticize Jen's character in general, that's not the issue here, I'm not here to defend She-Hulk. But this clip is really fucking problematic because Drinker gets millions of views, and if these are the kinds of messages he's giving to his audience, and if people take them to heart, which wouldn't surprise me, having interacted with his audience before, then that can lead to situations like these happening more frequently in real life. More so than what already fucking happens all the fucking time. And in real life, most women can't just turn into the Hulk and save themselves. In real life, this situation ends a lot worse. It's also pretty clear if you read the subtext of the scene that Jennifer has tried this before. Like most women, if you've ever thought to ask one. Jennifer has likely experienced sexual harassment of some kind before. But this is not the only example of him having some really questionable statements. Here he is talking about Echo, a show that doesn't have much hype around it, but it stars a woman of color, so they have to stir up something about it. But essentially in his video on Phase 5 of the MCU, he basically spends the whole video complaining about the new diverse characters in the MCU, and how much he already hates all the upcoming projects, before they've even come out or shown a trailer. It really goes to show the extent of this man's analysis, but basically he lashes out at some women.
Like Loki Season 2. You enjoyed watching one of the coolest and most interesting antagonists of the MCU getting turned into a whiny, emotional, insecure, and dumb as fuck sidekick whose only function is to get humiliated, broken down, and outclassed by his superior female opponent, right? Well, can't wait for a whole new season of that. Or how about Ironheart? Ever wondered what would happen if Iron Man was a flawless, idealized teenage prodigy named Mary Sue? Sorry, Riri? Nah, me neither. Can't wait to see how the show tries to convince us that Riri is smarter and more talented and more capable than Tony Stark ever was, while taking subtle digs at the flaws in his personality to slowly break down our perception of him.
Not a great plan.
Fuck off, Ironheart. You're never gonna fill Tony's shoes, and all you're ever gonna be seen as is a cheap plastic imitation of something far better.
And it's just so ridiculous. Because like Loki has always been emotional, insecure, and sometimes dumb as fuck. Has this man even paid attention to these movies? Listen, they humanize him a lot in this show, but I guess that's off the table because oh no, another capable female character that won't twerk on his balls. How sadistic. And then he goes off on a fictional girl for something that he made up. I don't know if you guys found that part as funny as I did, but seriously, this guy's fucking ridiculous.
Fuck off, Ironheart. You're never gonna fill Tony's shoes, and all you're ever gonna be seen as is a cheap plastic imitation of something far better.
However, then he goes on to say this about Echo.
Or how about Echo, the story of a deaf-mute protagonist who can't communicate with other people in any meaningful way, who has to go back to her hometown and reconnect with her Native American roots. Yeah, thrilling stuff.
And am I saying this to defend Echo as a show? No. I mean, it's way too fucking early for him to already have made up his mind about it, but it's fine if he's not excited for it. Heck, I'm not even that excited for it myself. But to say that Echo as a deaf-mute person can't communicate with other people in any meaningful ways is just such a bullshit thing to say. It's not only really disrespectful to people who are deaf or mute, saying they can't communicate in meaningful ways, but it also just shows a lack of artistic appreciation. Writing off a show because the main character has a disability that requires unique and nuanced storytelling, and just unnecessarily dunking on the prospect of a character trying to reconnect with their roots, shows an infantile understanding of film as an art form. Sure, it's fine to not be excited for Echo, but this whining is just pathetic. And listen, you may be thinking that I'm just singling out specific talking points out of a whole video, and yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. I have disagreements with the rest of these videos, but for the most part, a lot of Drinker's videos are fine. It's usually just him rambling on about She-Hulk or Spider-Verse or other MCU projects, doing his little analysis of the media, but then out of seemingly nowhere, he just says some things that are not just wrong, but even potentially harmful. The Critical Drinker is not just dishonest, he also spreads some pretty fucked up ideas, and that makes his dishonesty even worse, because you know he could do so much better. So all in all, there are a lot of things to criticize about the Critical Drinker, and to praise, of course. There are good things about his content. But people sing his praises all the time, while not a lot of people call him out for the bullshit he spews in a lot of his content. Whether it being dishonest misrepresentations of the media he critiques, or fucked up one-off statements, or the fact that he uses a veil of film criticism and professionalism to really just talk about his political messages when he also complains about politics and media. There's definitely some hypocrisy. However, more and more people are actually starting to counteract some of the things he's saying, and I'll link some great videos down in the description, and I hope this trend is because people have begun noticing how influential this guy is. He's not just some small-time YouTuber, he's massive. His audience is not only extensive, it's loyal, and letting him continue to make lazy and dishonest content without any real criticism would be the same as us letting him get away with all the bullshit. Listen, he naturally has the freedom to do and say as he wants, but we also have the freedom to call him out for the dumb things he says. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know as always what you thought down below. Like, subscribe, and check out my memberships or Patreon to support me further. Thank you to my supporters, which includes Ben Joseph and Nicholas, but other than that, I hope you all have a wonderful day, stay safe, and peace out.